Tonight at 5, the housing divide.
We need to change policies in order to build the right kind of stuff so people can afford to live.
Colorado's real estate market is hotter than ever right in the middle of a pandemic. It's creating a wide gap between homeowners and renters, and a new Denver policy could make things worse.
And I do think it will absolutely increase the cost of rentals in Denver.
Plus, Loveland eyes more change after a controversial arrest. And the president raises the bar on the vaccination effort.
Our goal by July 4th is to have 70% of adult Americans with at least one shot.
Now, Colorado won't be able to rebound if people can't make ends meet. And there are a lot of people breaking the bank just to make rent.
Colorado's housing prices are about 66% higher than the U.S. average. This is according to cost of living data. The other cost of living categories, transportation, groceries, healthcare, and utilities, they are in line with the rest of the country.
And it's created this massive gap between homeowners and renters. Homeowners are keeping up with their payments, are sitting on an asset that gains more value every year, more than most people's 401ks. Now, if you bought an average 3-bedroom house in Denver for $360,000 5 years ago, it's worth $545,000 today.
Wow. For renters, the hot real estate market, well, it's a burden. If you rented a 2-bedroom for the last 5 years instead of buying, you would have spent $88,000 on rent, $25,000 more than the national average, and there is no return on your investment. And this goes beyond homes. It's people's lives. 93% of people said owning a home made them happier than renting. This according to a 2019 Bank of America survey. 45% of renters said they regret not buying. Of course, many can't afford it, especially as prices continue to climb.
And the housing divide is just one factor behind a worker shortage in several Colorado industries. So take a look at our teachers. In Colorado's 2 largest cities, Denver and the Springs, teachers spend a third of their income on housing. A recent Colorado Education Association survey found that low pay is a continuing stress for our teachers. 2 in 5, in fact, considered quitting after this year.
Of course, that is something that we have for years been talking about, the need to address. The fact that many educators cannot make ends meet on their educator salary. So I'm hopeful that we will pull together as a state, as policymakers, as district officials, to hear our educators and to address their needs so that they can stay in the profession.
Experts say you need to make $87,000 a year to afford the median home in Denver. The median household income is $69,000. And tonight, renters could end up paying the price for a plan to keep Denver's landlords honest. Denver7's Liz Gilardi with that.
For rent signs and for sale signs don't seem to stay up long in Denver.
It is very difficult to buy a home in the metro area. And a lot of people are going to be stuck renting, and you probably want to keep that as affordable as possible.
Denver City Council approved a rental registry, and 54,000 rental properties could be required to have a license. City Council President Stacey Gilmore backed the measure and told us in a previous interview that it's about protecting renters. Part of the ordinance also requires landlords to provide a lease and share information about tenants' rights.
I feel like this rental license program is just level setting for both property owners and landlords, that they know what those expectations are, but then also for our renters having that peace of mind.
The city's Department of Excise and License says this will be the largest expansion of required licensing in the city's recent history, but it will be phased in over a couple of years. The program would cost an estimated $434,000 to get off the ground. Landlords would pay a license fee beginning at $50, and they have to hire their own inspector.
There's not a surplus of home inspectors as it is, so I would also wonder if there's enough home inspectors to take on that additional demand for their business.
Viewers were quick to weigh in on Facebook. Jerry writes, so how will this help get out of control rent prices under control? Because that's the real problem. But Joshua says this would hold landlords responsible. Lose your license, lose your rental income.
And I do think it will absolutely increase the cost of rentals in Denver.
Colorado Apartment Association also hinted in a statement that costs will be passed on to renters, saying the extra requirements will lead to more expensive rental housing in the years to come. Liz Gilardi, Denver7.
Today, the La Plata coroner identified the victim of a deadly bear attack over the weekend as 39-year-old Lainey Malavolta. The attack happened north of Durango, and wildlife officers tracked and put down the bears involved. 2 Denver police officers are being suspended without pay for their actions during last summer's Black Lives Matter protests. One, Officer Derek Streeter, is suspended 10 days without pay for shooting pepper balls at people who weren't a threat. The other officer, Diego Archuleta, is suspended 6 days without pay for pepper spraying a woman sitting in her car. She was not a threat, and Officer Archuleta told investigators his decision was a mistake.
The arrest of Karen Gardner will likely be the main focus of tonight's Loveland City Council meeting. Last night, the city's Citizen Advisory Board met for the first time since the video was released of Gardner's arrest. Some calling the police chief to step down.
I actually believe you should resign, as well as the other officers.
Gardner's attorneys say officers broke her arm during that arrest in June of 2020. She is elderly. She suffers from dementia as well. She is now suing the police department. 3 officers have already left the department as a result of the outcry of this. Loveland City Council wants to do more, but councilors have different opinions on just what that would be. Some want a brand new citizen commission devoted to police oversight. Others want a more narrow commission focused on the Gardner arrest and how to rebuild trust in the community. So the meeting starts at 6 tonight. We'll let you know what happens tonight on Denver7 News at 10.
About 25,000 people received a dose of the vaccine yesterday, and we are on pace to have 2 million people fully vaccinated for coronavirus by Friday. Unfortunately, our case count is going up. More than 1,500 new cases were reported just today. And Colorado is second right now to Michigan for most new cases per capita. Today, President Biden announced he wants 70% of the country to have at least 1 dose of the vaccine by the 4th of July. Right now, about half the country has received 1 dose. And to meet the new goals, Biden's directing tens of thousands of pharmacies to offer walk-in appointments. And the FDA is set to authorize Pfizer's vaccine for kids ages 12 to 15 by early next week.
Well, Colorado providers have given nearly 3,000 Johnson & Johnson vaccines since that temporary pause over the blood clots was lifted 2 weeks ago.
And we now know of 8 clotting cases here in Colorado. Denver7's Gary Brode explains how doctors kept those people safe.
Nearly 1.5 million. That was Morgan Wolf's chances of developing blood clots after receiving the Johnson & Johnson vaccine.
Have you asked yourself, why me?
I mean, I'm definitely curious as to the cause, as far as, this super rare occurrence.
State officials tell me there's been 8 reports of blood clotting following the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. Wolf got her shot the 1st of April. About a week later is when she started feeling the effects.
Suddenly in the afternoon, I was just all at once felt headache and chills and body ache, and just really suddenly felt pretty terrible.
On April 13th, as her symptoms were getting worse, Wolf says she was already on her way to the UC Health at the University of Colorado Hospital when the news of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine broke.
Breaking news at 5:26, the CDC and FDA are recommending a pause in the U.S. for Johnson & Johnson's COVID vaccine.
I feel like there's this sort of little blip of being fortunate in an unfortunate situation.
Doctors immediately ran extensive tests.
Chased those labs with CT scans, which found the clot in the brain and the clot in the lungs.
Only days earlier, the CDC released new information telling doctors not to use the blood-thinning medicine heparin, typically used for blood clots.
The thought was heparin is more likely to make it worse in this clotting situation than in others. Therefore, let's play it safe and try something different.
Dr. Todd Clark and his team at UC Health chose the drug bivalirudin.
At the time when she showed up, there was no guidance, there was no published cases of how to do this without heparin.
Weeks later, the CDC published a study with 12 cases. In 2 of the cases, bivalirudin was used. For Wolf, it worked. After 6 days in the hospital, she was able to go home. She still has headaches, but says she is feeling better.
With everything that's happened to you, if you could go back in time, would you get the shot again?
Yes, I would still get vaccinated. Just given the knowledge I have now, I would choose Moderna or Pfizer.
In Aurora, Gary Brode, Denver7.
Still a bit cool out there right now, but we do have 70s and even 80s in the 7-day.
Plus, a judge allows an ex-cop to walk free less than a year after he held a CSU football player at gunpoint.
And we'll introduce you to a man who says he found his calling behind a welder's mask.
As long as you got a purpose in life, you know, you got something to live for.